Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the Geometer's Compass. This is Geoff from Dublin in Ireland and
Scott Onstott in Victoria, Canada.
you are all very welcome to our podcast number 10. And although we don't have a special guest in human form for this episode, we have decided to choose a blog post of Scott's from the past, which is kind of timely because this is our first podcast of 2022. Scott and I have been talking over the new year about all the nice rituals, from the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, and the way we bring light into our houses. And amongst all these kind of nice discussions we were having, we were very taken by the sort of huge ritual that happens in New York City, which involves the dropping of this ball from the top of Times Square down onto, when we're not in pandemic times at least, thousands and thousands of people in person to sort of celebrate the turning of the new year. And then I believe billions of people all over the world, Now, the thing is, there's some really juicy geometric gems involved in this whole ritual. And, they're not secret or hidden, but they're also not really promoted that much either. People just go, hey, Happy New Year. Let's put on New York and count down the countdown, But actually, when you look into it, and this, I'm talking, you go to Waterford crystals, they're the people that put the crystals on the ball, their visitor website. You'll see all these beautiful numbers, and then you'll discover that it's a really geometric power piece, isn't it, Scott?
Yeah, I would call it a secret in plain sight because it's published on their website, all the numbers about it, and we all, we've all seen that time ball drop, I would wager. But very few people are probably aware of the kind of geometric harmony and number magic going on with that Waterford crystal. They might even not even know it's a crystal and geometric structure in the first place. I mean, it just looks like an illuminated ball of some kind, right?
And then you don't really ask the question, why are they dropping a ball? Like, who came up with that? Like, who said, hey, I know what we want to do. And then it's like, well, how will we design this ball and what will it be made of? And,
how far will we drop it? Also, it's 70 feet.
And what city will we choose to do it in? Will we do it in, a small town in rural Ireland? Or will we go for maybe the biggest, most iconic? I mean, even as an Irish kid growing up, New York is always like, the Big Apple, so good they name it twice. New York, New York. It's like, it almost had an aspirational feel. It's a bit like the center of the Western world, at least. I mean, from my cultural conditioning, I would look to New York like it would be an aspirational place for me to go and visit, and it has that energy to it,
Yeah, it's like a AAA plus city or something like that. It's one of the world's most important cities.
Yeah,
it's
hey, do you know what?
All these superlatives about it.
And then you have this kind of iconic city. I mean, let's be honest, we're talking about the Western world here, yeah? So I think let's be at least conscientious of the cultural lens that you and I are coming to with this, but from our cultural conditioning, it's a big deal, New York, in certain respects,
Another thing is the fact that we call it Times Square in New York, which just kind of connotes the idea of time. But it was actually named after the New York Times, which was headquartered there in 1904. And I think they moved their headquarters shortly after that. But notice it's not called the New York Times Square. It's just called Times Square.
Yeah.
And so we kind of forget that it was named after a newspaper, and we just assume that it has to do with time.
Actually, for our listeners, Scott, can I read out? This is straight from the Waterford Crystal website, which I think is really informative. There's beautiful pictures on it, and just to give people a background, the story of Times Square and the first New Year's Eve party. So this inaugural New Year's Eve bash held in 1904 commemorated the official opening of the headquarters of the New York Times with a fireworks display at midnight. 2 years later, when the city banned the fireworks display, the Times arranged to have a large illuminated 700-pound iron and wood ball lowered from the tower flagpole precisely at midnight to signal the end of 1907 and the beginning of 1908. And since that time, hundreds of thousands of people have gathered around the tower, now known as One Times Square, for the famous New Year's Eve ball lowering ceremony. As millions nationwide and nearly 1 billion watching throughout the world unite to count down the final seconds of the year. So that's kind of puts the thing in context, doesn't it, Scott?
Yeah, and also the notion of One Times Square is the official title. And to me, that's like the one World Trade Center or the one ring to rule them all kind of concept, you know?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, although that sounds very like Sauron and creepy, to be honest, I have to say, do you know what I love about this? You know, it's like, if we are going to kind of capture the attention of 1 billion people, okay, and we're going to drop something into the collective consciousness, well, I could hardly think of anything better than a sublime geometric form that's dripping in the most gorgeous principles and qualities. You know, I just wish it was talked about more. You know, I mean,
You got to see
kind
this
of.
thing. I'm going to put a graphic up on the video version of this podcast, so you can appreciate the kind of beautiful geometric crystal that this is, and it's you know, composed of hexagons and pentagons, and it's all subdivided into triangles, and each triangle is itself subdivided into 16 equilateral triangles. And
Yeah,
if you
that's
look at
right. Yeah.
Waterford's site, they say that there are 2,688 crystal triangles in the design. And I was kind of baffled by that. I thought, oh, that's not that. I've never heard that number, 2,688. I didn't think it was that significant until I got my calculator out and I hit the square root button. And it's 51.84, which is the slope angle of the Great Pyramid in degrees. You know, it's a very important number. It's very much in my mind. You know, I'm always, you know, blown away by the mathematical encoding in the Great Pyramid. And I think that in a way, this is kind of a hint at that. Like you know, it's that slope angle squared. And then furthermore, what else do we find in this write-up, Geoff? There's something about the number of LEDs.
Yeah, so basically we have, let me just see, it's actually down here. The ball is covered, okay, so 2,688 Waterford crystal triangles, okay? So you discovered the square root of that being the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, which I think is amazing. But the more we digged into this, Scott, the more we discovered there were so many kind of associations with time. So the ball is illuminated by 32,256 Philips Luxion Rebel LEDs, light emitting diodes, okay? And each LED module contains 48 Philips Luxion Rebel LEDs. And so that's 12 red, 12 blue, 12 green, and 12 white, okay? So each ball is illuminated. I'm just trying to see, each LED module contains 48. I think there's one LED module on each of those facets, right? And it gives us a total of 8064 LEDs of each color. Okay, so this is where Scott and I start getting very excited, because when we see the number 8064 or any number that expresses the quality 864, it's really significant for us, Scott, isn't it? I mean, the first thing we point to is it's the diameter of the sun, isn't that right?
Well, 864,000 miles is the kind of canonical diameter of the sun, but it's also 86,400 seconds is exactly 24 hours.
Yeah.
So
So,
one
so
rotation of the Earth is exactly 86,400 seconds, which has to do with time. And
yeah.
so we have
And when we broke
8064
down,
LEDs of each color, and they're
yeah.
expressed in these dodecads, these 12 of each color.
And that coincides with like the seconds in a day. Like it's every day is exactly 86,400 seconds,
Yeah. Yeah.
So can we just throw in a caveat here? And when we're talking about the qualities of geometry, Scott, would you mind explaining how it doesn't matter how many zeros you put in or how many decimal points you put in? Because it took me a while to understand that 0.864 has the same qualitative values as 864,000.
Or
Would you do an explainer on that?
8064 or 86.4. Yeah, it has to
Yeah.
do with the digital roots of numbers and how zero is a placeholder that connotes the decimal system. So zero isn't actually really a number, it's just a void that holds a place. So when we're looking at the quality of numbers, we're looking at the digits themselves. And so the location of the decimal point or intervening or trailing or leading zeros don't matter when we're
Yeah.
looking at this. So 8064 is the same quality as the number of seconds in a day. And to me also, the fact that they divide all the LEDs into sets of 12 indicates the 12 signs of the zodiac that
Or
are
12 months of the year, you can
12,
say.
yeah, 12 months of the year. So these are all time-based numerology, that's encoded in the
Yeah.
time ball. And
Now,
that got us talking earlier about, like, what do you think? What
yeah.
were the whoever designed this? I guess I'm assuming it was someone at Waterford. Um, I'm not sure if it was, or whether they were just hired to make the individual crystals, or whether it was their design in the first place. But the fact is I don't know the name of the designer. It doesn't really matter, but I want to know if they were aware of all this time symbolism in the numbers, or whether they kind of felt their way into it.
Yeah, that's a really open question, Scott, which I'm fascinated with. But you know what? People could be saying at the moment, they could be saying, I mean, we've been called geometric nerds before, haven't we, Scott? Both as a compliment and as an insult. So I would forgive people for saying, oh, boys, you're kind of reaching for straws here. Like, okay, those numbers are interesting and it does coincide with the seconds of the day and there is 12 months of the year.
Well, it
But
seems
like, come
appropriate
on.
in this case, doesn't it? I mean, it's a time ball.
Well,
Um,
let's keep taking the plot here. Let's
yeah.
keep because this is where I think it gets really juicy, right? So we then looked at there's 2688 triangles of these Waterford crystal triangles, right? But then on the actual structure itself, there's a lovely photo actually on this same Waterford crystal site, and you will notice that there's within each very clear equilateral triangle, there's four smaller triangles, and each equilateral triangle holds 16 of those facets, basically. So if you divide 2688 by 16, you end up with the number 168. And I know that number because I know it coincides with the amount of hours in a week. So now our kind of argument that this thing is linked to time is kind of getting stronger. You know what I mean? And there's another geometric finding that we discovered that if you draw a polygon with an internal angle of 168 degrees, you get a 30-sided polygon, which so now we're looking
Sort of
at
like a
like,
month, right? That's sort of like a
yeah,
month. Yeah.
yeah. So we've now got like seconds in a day. We've got like, hours in a week. We've got days in a month. We've got like 12 months of the year. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
It's sort of
time-based things popping out.
like if they hired me to design a ball that encoded time, I would be really proud if I could have come up with something, as
Yeah.
amazing as this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I love it. I think rock on Waterford Crystal and New York and whoever has decided to put this together. I just find it funny that it's not championed more. Like it's a little throwaway snippet on Waterford Crystal's blog post,
well, that's the
where
thing. It's also like it makes me think about holidays and time, and how there's kind of a deeper subtext that few are aware of to a lot of different holidays. Um, but that could be their power and why they kind of resonate with us. For example, Christmas, December 25th, is the first day that the days started getting longer after the solstice on the 21st. There's like a 3-day standstill, and then on the 25th is actually the first day that's any longer than the days that came before. And that holiday predates Christianity. I think it went back to Mithraism, but it had this kind of resonance with the stars,
Mm.
and even in much more modern times, when the foundation of the United States happened, the official story is that it was July 4th is the Independence Day, right? And that's aphelion, which is the day when I believe when the Earth is closest to the sun in the entire yearly cycle. And that's no accident. It's just not some random day in July. It's a perfect solar day. And I think the founding fathers, being Freemasons, many of them, they were doubtless aware of this and planned that on purpose. And so it has this kind of resonance with us, whether we're aware of it or not. In that particular case, I would say they were aware of it. But in other cases, I'm not so sure. Like, I'm thinking of credit cards being golden rectangles. It's 98% exact, which leaves a little gap in there to make me kind of assume that the designer of the credit card proportions felt their way into it rather than rationally deciding to make it an exact golden rectangle. Either that or they did that, but they added a little error so that they'd have plausible deniability. I don't know. But some of these things seem to be premeditated, and other things are not. And they just work, and they just resonate with us, and we might not even be conscious of it. I would say most people wouldn't be conscious of all the wonderful geometry and numerology in the time ball.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I find it's almost like a kind of a miraculous gift that this is kind of like what is being dropped on us, because you hear so much of, and I have objections to how the attention of the collective mind, mine included, is being hijacked, or maybe not hijacked, but I give my consciousness away to algorithms and to all of these, things on my phone, which I would do far better off taking a break from, to be honest, And, you would think, especially in America, the commercial, headquarters of the world, it would be a great advertising slot with 1 billion people, like to put your logo for a new car or something, and I'm sure that happens all around the edges. But the centerpiece of this is really quite beautiful, actually. The centerpiece, but it's almost like I wouldn't say it's hidden or anything. Obviously, everybody comes down for the ball, but all these beautiful details you don't hear them championed. Like I never knew till we looked into it, and we checked out your blog, that it really points to time, and that 864 is a remarkable number because it's clearly linked to time, not just in seconds of the day. But another thing I'd like to share, Scott, is on some of the time off I had over the Christmas break. I was going on some lovely walks, and I was listening to a great audiobook by Alan Watts, and I just love Alan Watts. I mean, he could talk about paint drying, and I would love listening to him, but it came up where he was talking about the ancient Vedic system of time in the Hindu tradition, called like the kalpa, which is like an eon, and then he went into the specific details of this thing called the yuga cycle, and in the yuga cycle, it's broken down into 4 different bandwidths of time, and I think it's 4,320,000 years is what one yuga cycle is, right? And I have it here, actually. And basically, so that's half our 864. Yeah, like 432 And like this is as ancient as it gets, like the Hindu golden system of time, you know.
Yeah, and that
And then
I call that the cosmic sequence. I have a blog post on that in particular, and it's all these numbers that are doubled or halved from
yeah,
864,
so
and
like the
they
Kali
include all
Yuga,
kinds of miraculous things, you know.
yeah, you've 432,000 years in the Kali Yuga, which I believe we're in now. Then there's 864,000 years, you know, like in the other Yuga. Then there's 1296 and 1728. They're familiar numbers to me, by the way. But they're not obviously a doubling of 864. But I was on this walk and I was thinking about the ball and I was thinking about the 864 and I was thinking about time, and then I heard about this ancient system of time, which is really all encompassing. You know, I think it all adds up. 71 of these yuga cycles add up to one kalpa, which is like 4.32 billion years or something, you know. And the universe just keeps on going through these breaths of time, you know, in and out, basically, you know.
There's
Um,
also something encoded in the time ball, in that it is a complex polyhedron that combines hexagonal and pentagonal geometry. So it's the
yeah,
play of sixes and fives, you know.
yeah,
And then another blog post, I think it's one of those blog posts that I wrote about the time ball. I compared the distance between the time ball and the Washington Monument in DC, and that's 333 kilometers. You know,
wow,
I think that's kind of amazing, because also the Washington Monument itself is its numerology is all a play of sixes and fives, in that it's 5,000, what is it, 555 feet, 5.5 inches high. And
mm-hmm,
I think in reality, it's like 3/8 of an inch less than that because of settling. But
mm-hmm,
that would also be equal to 6,666 inches. So it's all sixes and fives in the measurements of that monument. And so we have
yeah,
this very important geometric metrology in the Washington Monument and in the time ball, and they are connected with this kind of a very important measurement of 333 kilometers.
yeah. And isn't, I know you have a great affinity with repeating digits, Scott, and but um, didn't you pick up like nice links to the Statue of Liberty and other, what, there was a few other connections you'd made.
Yeah, this one is the time ball is 5.55 miles from the torch of the Statue of Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
you know, which is, I think that's pretty significant, in that it's this illuminated ball and this illuminated lighthouse torch. You know, they have symbolic kind of light bringing connections there,
Yeah,
illuminating us. Um,
yeah. It is like light bringing qualities. And then you have the 864, which points to the sun, which is obviously the bringer of all life and light on earth, you know. And then the new year, I mean, not directly because it's the winter solstice, but, you know, we are heralding in the coming of the new year, you know, which is the return of the light or whatever. Maybe,
yeah.
you know, I
I
mean,
think I
maybe
think
we're
that
reaching
the
here.
choice of January 1st to be the new year is very strange to me. I've always thought that's odd, you know,
Yeah,
to celebrate a new year kind of in the middle of winter. And also
yeah,
demark a new day in the middle of the night.
yeah,
It just seems kind of backwards to me.
I
Um,
get you.
you know, like and also the way that we have a tortured calendar, you know, like October, oct means 8 and it's the 10th month. November, nov means 9 and it's you know, and then December, deaths means 10 and it's the 12th month. So we're all out of phase here because of Julius and Augustus Caesar inserting July and August into the calendar. And then
Yeah, yeah,
every
yeah.
month is, you know, it's like this bizarre, you know, does it have 28, 29 days? Does it have 30 days? Does it have 31 days? Um, it's just a nightmare, really. And there's a different solution to that whole problem of the year that's so much better and so much more logical. It's called the International Fixed Calendar. of 13 months of 28 days each. So 4 weeks, 13
Yeah.
months, that's 364 days. And so then you, at the end of the year, you have one day, or possibly two if it's a leap year, out of time, where you would
Yeah.
have this kind of new year thing happen. To me, that makes so much more sense. It's so much more satisfying. It's so much more rational than our
Yeah.
incredibly bizarre calendar that we work with. But how can we
Yeah.
change that? It's like this thing that's in place, and I just can't imagine how the world could transition over to another calendar.
There's a kind of a cultural gravity to things like that, isn't there? Like, it's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
just how we relate to time. But I think how we relate to time as a culture actually probably goes really, really deep. I mean, I've no expertise in this area at all, but I do think when I look at all the kind of the ancient wisdom traditions or whatever, um, they had a very particular way of relating to time, and time was kind of central to their one of their core values. I'm talking about the Vedic system. It was time was like a huge part of how they viewed reality. And I know I have no knowledge of this particular tradition, but I can't wait to learn more about it. But the Mayan tradition and the Mayan calendar, I have a lot of friends who are very interested in that system of time. But what the point I'm trying to make is, it's interesting to me that these ancient cultures put time as a kind of a primary value, and how they related to time was supremely important for them,
Well, I think there's
and
kind of an underlying assumption that we have in the world today. I think, wouldn't it be fair to say that we all believe it's the year 2022? Pretty
yeah,
much in the whole world, everybody says that.
yeah, maybe China is different, I think, possibly.
Well, I know
But
that in Judaism they have a different calendar, and the year is something like, I don't know, 5700 or 5800. I forget, but there's some other
yeah,
number there. There's some alternative time reckoning systems,
but
but
yeah, I agree. Yeah, like the Western world, definitely, it's a 2022 vibe right now. Yeah,
yeah. But when you think about that, we now, it used to be called what was it? AD, right?
yeah,
Which is Anno Domini, which is a Christian reference. And so, to be more politically correct, they now call it the Common Era, but
yeah,
they didn't change the numbering system. It's still based on the year of Jesus's birth.
yeah,
And so I
yeah,
think that's something that we forget. Like, wait a minute, we're everybody's still basing this on Jesus's birth. Like, isn't there some other event that we might all reset our calendars on? I think that maybe if we met extraterrestrials, like in a way that was totally undeniable, that they landed on the White House lawn, or there was some kind of a very important day, we might want to reset our calendar.
yeah, 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 yeah. I know. And more than resetting our calendar, it's like this, how do we relate to time? Like our sleeping patterns, our circadian rhythms, the movement of the planet around the sun. Like there's natural rhythms in nature, clear as day. I mean, they're available for all of us to see. I mean, the plants, they bud and flower in spring. The days get longer in summer. It's beautiful. And we are not separate from that system. We're woven into it. And it's I think it's helpful to sort of reconnect with that, in a way, to reconnect with the cycle of time in a personal way that's meaningful for you, can be really helpful.
I think that any enlightened calendar would base itself off of the natural cycles as closely as possible. Uh,
Yeah, me
and,
too.
and I
Me
think
too.
that, like, the week is sort of an abstract concept. And it's very interesting and unusual that we've chosen 7 as the number
Mm,
of days in a week, which, because 7 is such a difficult number, in terms of its relation with other numbers.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's nothing. The moon doesn't operate in a 7-day cycle, and there's nothing out there that does that. But
Yeah.
we base our lives on, oh, it's another Monday.
Yeah.
I got to go back to work,
I know.
it's,
I
it's a
know.
strange thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is strange. Yeah. And then like yeah, I'm just thinking our time is based on the sexagemal, or how do you say that word?
So I call it
60, the power of 60.
sexagesimal. Yeah.
The sexy system, we could call it,
Yeah. There you go.
but not the decimal system. It's like a factor of 6, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is what, like, 60 seconds, 60 minutes, and so on.
And like,
And then
Monday is moon day. Tuesday
yeah.
is like based on the Norse god Tu, and
Mhm.
and so each one of the days of the week has a reference with a god and a planet.
Mhm. Yeah.
Saturday is Saturn day. Sunday is the Sun day. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
I think the alchemist denoted metals to each day as well. I think,
yeah.
um, there's yeah. I mean, 7 is a cool number. Don't get me wrong, but it's funny that we decided to divide our week that way. I do get kind of like, where does that come from?
Yeah. So there's a lot that
it
we
makes you
get.
think.
There's a lot that we get, like all this tradition that we just inherit and we don't really question. Oh, it's Monday,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't think about it. And I wonder how much of our reality is sort of subconscious like that, where we just do it, we follow the pattern, but we don't even understand it.
yeah,
We don't,
yeah, yeah.
where does it
Totally.
come from? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I was on these walks I had over the Christmas break. One of the things I was looking at is, and I think it's a beautiful ritual, is that everybody in Ireland, at least, and I know around the world, they illuminate their houses with lights for Christmas, right? And we all put a Christmas tree. I mean, whether you're Christian or not Christian, so many people have now become lapsed Catholics in Ireland. So I mean, I wasn't even looking at it from that point of view. I was just looking at it as a kind of a sort of a very visible ritual activity where we bring light, additional light into our homes. Okay. And it's done in the form of this tree and we throw lights on it. And now people do lovely things with lights outside their houses. And I actually think it's really beautiful. I kind of like that. And then I was kind of thinking, right, well, it's kind of cool because we're getting to the darkest part of the year, right? We've got the winter solstice on the 21st. And I was kind of thinking, is it that like we're scared of the dark? That is like, what if the sun left us forever? Well, we would all die and there would be no more life, So as the sun kind of like begins to dissipate day after day after day, it's almost like we're calling back the sun, calling back the light, by going, oh, please don't leave us. We love you. Here's some extra light,
Yeah, I think,
and
like an alien archaeologist would look at the earth and say, oh, these people are so primitive. They put lights on because they must be afraid of the sun not coming back, and when do they do that? They do that right near the winter solstice.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
then they're
yeah.
so relieved when the sun comes back again.
It's like the sun is coming back, our Christmas tree lights worked again,
Yeah.
I'm only jesting. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the ritual. We have a Christmas tree here with the lights on, and I kind of dig it as a ritual, but I think most of my peer group would never really question, why are we doing this? Does anyone know? Like, I mean, I know it's like, even if you go for the traditional religious foundations of Christmas, which, let's be honest, is what it's all about, Christmas. Okay, it's a celebration of the birth of Christ. Happy days. We could go with that. But why put a Christmas tree in your house and why wrap lights around it? Like, what has that got to do with the manger and the three wise men? And I mean, I know we do cribs, and people who are religiously orientated will do it in their own way, but the Christmas tree has almost become the most iconic. Well, at least from where I'm looking at it,
to me, I think that must be a pagan echo of like Yggdrasil or the world tree or something like that we're doing.
Yeah, and I was thinking of it. It has a nature vibe to it, which, sorry, I'm giving you all insights into the inner ramblings of Geoff's head now, But I was thinking, so we're bringing a tree into the home as well. So it's also kind of like inviting nature into the homestead, like to go out into the wild, to chop down a tree. Now, I got to be honest, we're using an artificial tree. So my head was kind of running around again going, Oh yeah, we're using an artificial tree. That's a whole other trip, that we need to go through. It's kind of like the fakery of the modern world, But the purity of the ritual is you get a real tree that doesn't exist in your home. You bring it in for this period of time and you wrap it in light. So it's like nature and light, I was thinking. Maybe I'm overthinking all these things.
Well,
Maybe it's
it
just like,
reminds me of Easter and the Easter bunny and eggs and
yeah,
fertility and like rebirth in that time of the year. It's like spring and everything's coming alive,
yeah, yeah,
and we're like,
yeah.
oh, we're gonna put a bunch of eggs out there and fill them with candies for the kids. And
Do you know what my favorite thing about Easter is, by the way? It's so Irish in a way. It's a movable feast, they call it. So, like, the way Christmas is 25th of December, that's when Christmas is. Halloween, 31st of, you've even got Paddy's Day, 17th of March, Valentine's Day even is definite, but Christmas is like
almost everything is definite except for Easter.
Easter's like, wait, what? Like, where's Easter? Hang on a second. When is Easter? Do you know when Easter is? I think it might be, is it March? Maybe it's April. Yeah. And then I was kind of like, but that it's entirely astronomical how that's decided upon.
Well, it's actually a solar and lunar calculation. It's like calendrical rocket science to figure out when Easter is.
It's the Sunday after the full moon, after the spring equinox is when it is. Okay. So let me say that again. So you have to get to the spring equinox, okay, and then you have to wait for a full moon, and then it's the Sunday after that is Easter Sunday. Now I think that's a groovy way to come up with a date. By the way, I think it's better than just like Paddy's Day is the 17th of March. I think it's I like this idea, but I don't know whether that's known in our culture. It's kind of like people just go, oh yeah, Easter is like wherever, it just floats around. I dig Easter's vibe because it floats around in time. But yeah, who knows why these things are, I mean, I often feel like, is there a group of like people that get together and they go, we're going to do this ball drop thing, right? And it's all about time. And we really want it to be dripping in geometry as well. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, like, is there a marketing group for some big company that they go, what would be good? I'm really feeling a kind of equilateral triangle vibe here, And what about crystals? Ooh, I like it, Tom. That's very good. Maybe we could tie it in with the numbers of the sun. Good, Mary. That's very nice too. I like it, Like, is it this kind of calculated ritual where all that geometry is embedded? And can we jump back? We should probably sign off soon, Scott. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to honor Waterford Crystal because I actually think this is quite beautiful, that the theme of the ball drop also has these gorgeous kind of values associated with each year. And so I'd love to read them out because I think this is probably the nicest part about it.
I think these values are the way they illuminate the ball in different ways. Each year is a different theme.
So in Times Square in 2014, all 2,688 of the Waterford crystal triangles introduced the new design Gift of Imagination and conclude in 2023 with the Gift of Love. Each year, the Waterford crystal triangles will depict a gift. Okay, so a theme of global aspiration whose value is universally treasured. Like, how nice is this? The triangles feature a series of intricate wedge cuts that appear to be endless mirrored reflections of each other, inspiring our imagination with a kaleidoscope of colorful patterns on the ball. So this would make me think there is that group of Tom and Mary and John all sitting down, deciding to actually make this into something really, really special. And so just to run through some of the gifts here on the website, they have the gift in 2015, it was the gift of fortitude. In 16, it was the gift of wonder. In 17, it was the gift of kindness. In 18, it was the gift of serenity. In 19, it was the gift of harmony. And in 2020, it was the gift of goodwill. And they have a little note down here. For the 2022 New Year's Ball, 192 new Waterford crystal triangular glass panels will be featured and introduced this year's theme, Gift of Wisdom. This year's Gift of Wisdom design will be included next to the past designs, including last year's Gift of Happiness pattern. So 2021 was the gift of happiness. This is the gift of wisdom. And there must be one more for 2023, I think, you
So
know.
there'll be a total of 9 gifts by the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure whether each year they add 192 extra triangular panels. I'm not sure whether that'll
And
mess with our
when
numbers
we
or
were
not.
talking
I
about
don't know.
this before, you were wondering, is this like, are these the fruits of spirit or the gifts of spirit? And we Googled that, and these are like Catholic things. And no, they're not. They're not the
Yeah.
same. They're different words. But it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me that they've chosen 9 gifts, you know.
Yeah.
And to me, those are the 9 digits, or the Ennead, you know, the 9 gods that you know that comprise the decimal system. That
Yeah. It's
allow all
very
this
cool.
numerology to actually take place. You need the 9 digits, you know.
Yeah.
And so these are the,
Yeah.
to me, because there are 9, it resonates with number, you know.
So listen, I think to conclude, you know that geometry is everywhere, you know, and we are all made of geometry, and we're woven into a geometric lattice, which is the creative principle at all that is, you know. But it's lovely to kind of pick a random piece of geometry, you know, and as just kind of a sidebar for you and I, Scott, isn't it? To just say, because we do say geometry is everywhere, but I'd also like to sort of thank Waterford Crystal or whoever's involved in that Times Square ball. It's even hard to find out who are the authors behind the thing, but like I think it's a deeply cool thing personally, and I totally dig it. Like rock on, the people that decided to put that together. You know, it's a beautiful way to ring in the new year, in my opinion.
It's a beautiful sacred geometry that I think, when you learn more about it, it enhances your appreciation for this
Yeah,
kind of mega ritual of the when the ball drops, you know,
yeah.
it's dropping this incredible geometry that's all based on the numbers of time.
Yeah, it's almost like bringing from heaven, you know, this kind of like unbelievably loaded, beautiful geometric gem, literally dripping in crystal, and like dropping that down onto the consciousness of a billion people on the planet.
In a
You
way, I
know,
think I see that as kind of the journey of the soul, like incarnating into the physical body. You know, it's kind of a symbolic representation of that movement of like birth into the world, you know, birth into
yeah,
the
it's
new
like
year. That's what we're all
as
doing here.
above, so below vibes are going on with it too, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, I think we've probably gone on enough, Scott, for today's episode. Do you feel like you like to say, is there anything else, any other little snippets that are taking your
I
fancy?
think we've covered it. I think hopefully we've turned you on to the magnificence of the time ball enough to get you interested. Maybe you'll check out the blog articles and read more on the Waterford Crystal website, and just be, you know, in wonder at this kind of secret in plain sight, this kind of beautiful geometry that's there.
Mm,
And now hopefully you understand it on another level.
yeah, nice one, Scott. Nice one. And thank you, dear listeners. You know, if you've listened all the way through, I hope you enjoyed it. And we will see you soon with another podcast. Thank you.